When Catherine Holt's daughter suffered a debilitating stroke at 18, it changed everything. This crisis didn't just test Catherine, it opened her eyes to the possibility. She said yes to working internationally, she pursued master's degree at 55, and she discovered that sometimes the darkest moments teach us how to truly live. Today she's going to share 3 profound truths. Why saying yes while staying aligned to who you are changes everything. How compassion and listening to learn became her superpowers, and why your voice matters more than you think. I am Irina, and this is Reclaim Your Life. Get ready to reclaim your life, discover inspiring stories, practical tools, and the path to true happiness. This is Reclaim Your Life with Irina. Let's begin the journey. This holiday season, skip the candles and gift cards. Give the woman in your life something that truly matters, or better yet, give it to yourself. The gift inside is for every woman who spent decades being everything to everyone else. It's time to remember who you are and rediscover your happiness. This isn't just a book, it's a permission to put yourself first again. Available now, because the best gift you can give is helping someone find themselves. Today, I'm honored to welcome Cathy Holt, a woman's leadership strategist, author, and internationally recognized coach who has spent more than 3 decades helping women reclaim their voice, their confidence, and their place at the table. As the creator of The Zone of Greatest Influence and author of Unstoppable Women, Cathy has guided leaders across United Nations, corporate spaces, academia, and grassroots movements. She's a true champion for equity, authentic leadership, and turning lived experience into wisdom. Cathy, I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about our conversation today.
Thank you. Me too. For listeners meeting you for the first time, how would you describe the woman you are today and the journey that shaped her?
I believe that I have kind of come full circle into what I call my zone of greatest influence, where I feel that I have the clarity about who I am, what I believe, where I want to go, and my values, my strengths, and I'm using them strategically. And the journey to get here, it was probably more, it wasn't a straight path. I would describe it more as a winding road, I guess you could say, that had detours, unexpected turns, sometimes steep climbs, because sometimes they were intentional. Sometimes I decided to take a scenic route because something was offered to me and I thought, okay, that sounds good. And other times it was just the road shifted or there were detours thrown up in my path and I had to figure out either how to get around them or just change direction. So, and those were moments that really, we can call them pivots, we can call them whatever you want, but that's really where I started to identify. It was sometimes, I do believe that some of our change and growth really happens in the zone of discomfort, because that's where we're not on autopilot and that's where we really have to think things through and learn. So I think that's where I really started. It was through those moments that I really learned more about who I was and what I really wanted to accomplish in life, because I stopped, I paused, I reflected, and I figured it out.
Thank you. I love it. I think our journey is never a straight path. We always have valleys and pivots and mountains to climb and things that kind of get unfolded, as long as we stay open to what comes next and don't get stuck in where we are and don't see just this little place where we are right now. Because life is such an amazing journey, and one thing could be just a chapter, and it's are open, then we can see what can come next.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree.
What is a passion or calling that pulls you forward, the thing that lights you up from the inside?
Well, I've always kind of had a little bit of a hang up, I guess, on fairness. I mean, I remember even as a little kid saying, well, that's just not fair. And, my mom had the standard answer, well, nobody promised you life would be fair. And I was a little snarky back then. I'd say, well, but it should be. And so That was one of my hangups. And I think part of that was because I grew up in a generation where in the 70s, coming of age, we were not, as women, offered the same opportunities that my, the men that I knew and the young men, out of school and college were being offered. And to me, it was frustrating. I was like, well, I hear what they're getting a chance to think about or do, basically in career day, you could say, in school, it was, you could be a nurse, a teacher, or they called it back then secretary. And those are great professions. But I heard the guys talking about engineering and doctors and medicine and, different things that nobody was talking to me about. And I was like, once again, that's not fair. Why don't I have the choice? I might choose those other things that were offered to me, but I wanted other choices. I wanted to have other choices. So I think that's where it all started and where my passion really started, because that's the thread that has gone through pretty much most of my life and all of the things I've chosen to do. I was always motivated by that passion of finding, ways for women to have access to those opportunities so that we could make choices and live different lives if that's what we chose to do.
All right. I love it. And yeah, you're so right. Usually, or in the past at least, women's careers were just like you shared very narrow. And it's like, you gotta be either that or just stay at home and don't work.
Yeah, exactly.
What, Heikolt, when you were growing up, did you have a dream of who you wanted to be when you get older?
Well, I'll be very honest, as a little kid, I kept saying I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. And everybody went, what? I didn't come from a family of doctors, but I thought the brain is so fascinating. And back then we knew so little about the brain. We still don't know all about the brain that we probably will, every year we learn more. And so it was kind of that whole concept of the brain that really attracted me. But I did try the pre-med route in college and decided it was just too structured for me. And I realized I wasn't that structured in determining what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And you have to do that if you're going to go into medicine. And so I went a little different direction. I mean, I got a degree in biochemistry, but I decided to become a medical writer, because then I could explore I could write for all different doctors and write for different magazines on all different topics that had to do with the brain and the body. And for me, that was a little bit more, I could just go in different directions, which I've learned I need to have those opportunities open to me because that's just the way my brain thinks.
Oh, I didn't know that, Heiko, when you go to become a doctor, you needed to know everything up front. I think we put kind of so much pressure, like by 17, you got to know your whole life path, which career you're going to, which degree in college. And I don't know, when I was 17, I didn't know what's going to happen and where how life will unfold.
Exactly.
We still kind of feel like kids on the inside, and here we have to make some kind of a choice that determines the rest of our life. And now what we've seen, I guess, there is no longer this one career that you kind of study and you're going to do for the rest of your life. There are so many changes that happening throughout our seasons, and it's not to say the first choice was bad, it's just maybe it outlived its expectancy and you've kind of gotten everything out of it, and it's no longer serves where you're going, and your values and beliefs change, and you gotta shift. And there is nothing wrong with that. We all go through different stages of life.
No, and that's exactly what I was feeling, is that I wanted those to be able to shift and to be able to make different choices, and didn't want to get into one particular pathway. And as I lived life, there were many instances where I did big shifts, and, because I could and I wanted to, and they were choices offered to me. And sometimes they were just because of circumstances that I had to deal with. Especially, I think we shared when we talked earlier that, my daughter had a stroke when she was 18, and it was precipitated by my mother's death, which really impacted me very, very hard because we were very close. And then, later on, while she was in recovery, her dad leaving. So that was definitely not a choice I made, but it was something I had to deal with, and a major shift. But once again, it gave me great opportunity to, once I got through the grief and the uncertainty and the emotions that accompanied, being there to support her on her recovery journey, it made me stop and think. It showed me smack in the face that life is very tenuous. And so where did I really want to go, and what did I really want to do? I mean, I'd been doing a lot of things up until that point, but that really was one of those pivots that was very instrumental in helping me form the next steps in my journey.
Would you say this was your wake-up call? Like you were living in one way and those events kind of let you decide that you wanted to take a different path in life?
I think it was probably the biggest wake-up call, let's put it that way. But I think all along life, we have these little wake-up calls that if we're willing to listen or pay attention, that some people call them those aha moments. And I think they happen all along our journey. It's just a matter of recognizing them. For example, for me, it was, I was working as a medical writer, and I was enjoying myself, but at the same time, I was getting stale. I was getting really, really stale. And so somebody said to me, because I was good at writing, hey, he was running for Congress. He said, "Can you help me write my position papers?" He was a physician. And I was like, okay, sure. But I paused, at first I paused because, is that something I really wanted to do? Was that something that spoke to me? And once again, I reflected. I had to think about it. But once I decided that, yes, that maybe that could help me in my passion of being able to influence the policies or how women were treated, maybe getting into politics was one of those ways. And getting involved in the political environment, maybe that's where I could springboard into things that would allow me to help women even more. So that was a little aha moment. But yes, her stroke was definitely one of those big Mack truck aha moments. And I did really, really start. I think that's probably where I really started understanding how I needed to take care of myself. Prior to that, I was a mom, I was a wife, I worked, I was doing all these different things for a lot of other people. And that's when I decided that no, now I had to look at what did I need? What should I do for me? And that did change my trajectory significantly.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you're so right. Oftentimes we, as women, spend majority of our life doing things for others. And sometimes we forget what did we come here to create. It's not just kind of the role of mom and spouse, but we have our own unique gift, our own unique talent, and it's up to us to find what it is. When you look back, what are your 3 biggest lessons that came from that awakening, the truths that still guide you today?
The lessons, there's so many. I mean, it feels like I'm a constant learner. I love to learn. That's why I probably have taken on so many different roles in life. I love to learn, so I became a professor of women and gender studies. I loved to learn, so I was offered an opportunity to work overseas after my daughter was kind of in her recovery and to the point where she could manage by herself, and she went back to college and things like that. And because of the political connections, a friend of mine who was going to be working in the Maldives said they need somebody to create a voter education program for their first multi-candidate Democratic election. I could have just said, no, I'm comfortable where I am, blah, blah, blah. I didn't. I said, okay, So one of my lessons was say yes. If an opportunity feels right, if it feels aligned with who I am, what I'm trying to accomplish in life, say yes. So I went. I had a great time. I taught a team how to do it so that they could then, move on to continuing those kinds of activities with newer elections as they opened up. And so I think one of the lessons was to say yes to if an opportunity presents itself, that you have that feeling, this is what I want to try. So that's one of the lessons, that it needs to align first with who you are, what you value, what your strengths are. And that's what I thought about. And that's why I said yes. I think another lesson is becoming or understanding the importance of compassion and empathy and how we treat each other. Because in my mind, you never know what somebody's going through during their day. And you could either be the last straw that sends them over the edge, or the kind word or the kind gesture that says, it's going to be okay. There's other people here that care. And so I think that is especially important nowadays in leadership, because it's not the old curmudgeon sitting in the office barking orders and demanding things. That's not how people really lead. Leading, it to me, is creating circumstances where people want to all join in towards a common goal. And to me, you can't do that if you're yelling and screaming and fighting and demanding. And, that's not how you encourage people to trust you, to want to follow you, to want to do things with you, not just for you. And so that was another lesson that I think was very important to learn, and that how important listening is to doing that. Listening to learn. We are taught so much in school. I mean, look at in school where we have debate teams, which are great. You need to learn how to defend your point of view. But at the same time, you also need to learn how to listen, to learn from everybody else, because everybody is unique. They are the experts in their lived experiences. Nobody else has lived the same, even if they're twins. And so they're the experts. So learn something from them. Don't just learn to argue or to rebut or to, because so many times we listen and we're thinking, how do I respond to that? How do I respond to that? No, just listen to learn. So I think that's another big lesson that I've learned. And the last one, probably, there's a lot more, but one of the important ones is that your voice matters, that we all need to speak up because we are experts of our lived experiences, because we are unique. We have different perspectives that all can contribute to the world, to solutions. That creative thinking in groups is so powerful, but you have to speak up. And that the more you start speaking up, it's scary. It's scary sometimes to speak up. I know I've been in situations where it's been very scary to speak up. But when I have, it's also encouraged other people around me to speak up. It's kind of opened that door to say, yes, we need to hear from you. And asking people, what do you think? We need to hear from you, because I think using our voices is one of our most powerful tools in life, and also in leadership, is using our voice.
Yeah, I love those lessons. Beautiful. Saying yes and being open to what comes next. Of course, oftentimes we so conditioned to say no all the time, or what's the worst that could happen, but having this openness to things could make life more interesting and not be fixated on one area. And then understanding the importance of compassion and empathy, I think, is so important as well. Listening to learn something, because we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth, and oftentimes we use our mouth more than.
Exactly.
And finally, that your voice matters. That's why this podcast is here, and the other podcast that I host, Single Parent Success Stories, is here to share stories, because we all have our lived experiences, and one lived experience could be a page in someone else's survival guide, and it could, again, teach or open kind of your mind to the possibility of what's possible, instead of that everything is bad and there is no hope.
I love that. Your story could be a page in somebody else's survival guide. I love that. I hope you don't mind if I use that because I love that.
I
That
didn't create
is
it. I
so
borrowed it somewhere
powerful.
too.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, thank you. Your work centers on helping women step into the zone of greatest influence. For women who feel stuck or silenced, what does that zone actually look like, and how can they begin finding it?
Well, I really believe that leadership starts from the inside. Like I've said a few times, knowing your strengths, knowing your values, knowing who you are, that's where it starts. Because once you know that and are comfortable with that, then you start, I think it gives you the courage to do things so that you start building confidence because you know it's important to you. And so you're willing to put yourself out there a little bit for it. So I think it helps us connect to our purpose by knowing those things. So I think that's one of the first steps that that we all need to go through and revisit because sometimes it changes. I mean, every time I've taken a different fork in the road, I mean, I've had to revisit and not so much my values because I think they've stayed pretty constant through my life, but just, how can I accomplish the things I want to accomplish? And that's once again revisiting and reevaluating how do my strengths and values align with this new opportunity or something that I want to do or something I want to change. I think it's also about leadership isn't a title. It's not and so we talk a lot about that so we think that if you don't have the title or the corner office, that you're not a leader. Women are leading every day in their life, even if it's something small like organizing the family calendar or something a little bit bigger, leading a team at work, or as an entrepreneur, stepping into something new and creating a new business. Those are all leadership things that we're doing. And so I think that that's another area that we talk a lot about because once you figure all those things out, then you can move into your trust. You develop that self-trust. And because you know those, you have that basis, you have that foundation that helps you venture out, try something new. And I think those are two of the foundational aspects of getting into the zone. Then I think the other part is once you've feel that way and you start using your voice, because once again, it's a powerful strategic tool. You start encouraging others to either join you or take on a cause or just be themselves also. You're actually encouraging others along your pathway. After that, I really work on how to use all these things strategically because I think, there's this saying, if you want something done, give it to a busy woman. That's great for the person who wants something done, but it might not be so good for the busy woman because it might take her off in a direction she doesn't want to go in, or she at the moment thinks she wants to go in, but it really doesn't align with what she's trying to accomplish. And we only have so much energy. I mean, no matter what, I have not, I did study physics and they said that energy can't be destroyed or created. So what we have, we know we need to figure out how to harness it and use it in things that we want to do. And if we're doing all these different things, and I call it grabbing shiny things, all the shiny things. And, I've done it. I've definitely done it. And I was doing it earlier in my life until I really figured out my focus. And so that's learning how to be strategic about, I call them our personal resources, because that's really what they are. So being strategic about how to use them, where to speak up, what battles to take on, what choices you're going to make. I think using all this that I've just talked about as your decision-making lens is so important. But you have to get there with knowing all these things so that you can start leading strategically. And then the last part is actually functioning in that zone of greatest influence where you're clear on who you are. You have, you're aligned with the things you're doing. You're speaking up because you feel confident that what you have to offer should be part of the conversation and part of the decision making. And beyond that, I think that's the point at which you can start influencing decisions and influencing policy. And I saw that when I worked in politics, I really, there were things that I was working on, especially in around women's healthcare, that I found that by me speaking up, sometimes even when I was trembling, speaking in front of legislators or lobbying them on certain issues, using my compassion, using my empathy, using my voice, those all combined to impacting some of the policies that were being made. And I think we all have that power. We all have that power to do that. But we have to get to that pinnacle of where we feel aligned and confident and understand what we want to change and what we want to do in our lives and in the world. And that's when you can start influencing things. I mean, I even work globally through the UN and several NGOs that work with grassroots women's groups around the world. And I've seen that in some of the women that I've worked with, where one woman started out as a caregiver. Women were dying trying to get to the hospital to deliver babies. And the babies and the mothers were dying because they lived a distance from the hospital. She talks about how she remembered seeing one woman trying to get there in a wheelbarrow. People were pushing her in a wheelbarrow because they didn't have cars. They lived, and she didn't make it. And so what she did is she got people, the women in her community, and they all got together and they created a small clinic out of one of the churches, a maternity ward, I guess you could call it, and then a small clinic for the care before delivery. And then they got the hospital that was in the next town that was so hard to get to come in and train women to help with deliveries if the woman couldn't get to the hospital, provide care. They ended up even getting an ambulance donated to them. And now she is a speaker on the global stage. She is called to meetings all over the world to talk about care and women that provide the care. So those kinds of stories, oh my God, they give me chills, because that's the epitome of working in the zone of greatest influence. But you have to go through all those steps to get there. And she had to go through all those steps, from doubting she could do anything to how did my experience, how could that change anything? And just taking little steps and going through the process. She's now a powerhouse. And I love when I see that.
That's incredible, amazing. And I love that you were the catalyst to allow that woman to discover her true calling. Believe in herself. Your book, Unstoppable Women, is all about owning our voices and leading change. What inspired you to write it, and what message do you think every woman needs to hear right now?
I appreciate your asking about that, because the book, there's a little backstory to the book that I'll share quickly. Is I am in another book. It's called the 262 Mission Accepted Women's Project. And it's the story, and Deb Drummond is the mastermind of this whole project. And I was in the book. It's 262 women sharing their stories. And I was in the book, and I was asked to write the foreword. So the book was given the opportunity to be presented at a celebrity gifting event at the Emmys. And so I was asked to go because, I was represented in the book, and I wrote the foreword, and I believed in the book and the project. And so I went, and we had a blast. I mean, you talk to over 100 people in those things, celebrities, influencers, all kinds of people. And the support was for women sharing their stories was phenomenal. So at that event, everyone said, Cathy, you've worked in leadership for so long. This is all you do. You need to write your own book. And I went, that's a lot. I've been thinking about it, but that's a lot. Well, then I was given the opportunity to present it at a gifting lounge at the Oscars, which was about 6 months away, if I got it finished. So I went, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to finally get it done. But what really motivated me, I mean, yes, I wanted to go to the Oscars gifting lounge, and I had a blast there. And I talked to, I think I gave out 126 books to the celebrities and influencers coming through, and talking to each one of them, and the support for women's leadership was phenomenal. Really, the book to me is a roadmap of different things that a woman can do to elevate her leadership capabilities. And it's divided into sections about the traits of that I think women are really good at. They used to be called soft skills back in the day, my day, 70s, because mostly they were women's skills, but, like empathy, communications, team building, trust building, emotional intelligence, all those things were considered soft skills. Well, nowadays, those are what leadership skills are. You look at Forbes magazine, a Harvard Business Review, any of these business think tanks, they all talk about this is what is needed in a leader nowadays. It's not, like I said, the old curmudgeon. So it goes through the different capabilities and it talks about how women are good at it. If you feel like you need to elevate a particular skill, then it gives you actual steps you can take and actions to take to actually strengthen those capabilities. So it's really, for me, I wanted to share just how do you get there from here kind of things. And it gives you a lot of the activities you can be doing to do that. Of course, the first thing early in the book, the chapter is about self-reflection, because you've got to know what you have, who you are, what you value before you can take the next steps. But it's not just in theory. It's a real practical guide to how to elevate your leadership.
Beautiful. I love it. It goes back to say again how you're one of your lessons when you said yes to the next thing, yes to the next thing, and having that goal post actually. I want to be at the Oscars. I gotta finish. There is no more delay. And I love that you created that guide. It's incredible. Thank you. Many women who live through adversity, divorce, burnout, identity loss, how can adversity become a source of agency rather than a cage?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, that's where we learn the most. It's those setbacks, those discomfort, those challenges that really teach us who we are and make us, it's like walking into a brick wall. You've got to stop. You've got to stop and think, because your circumstances have totally changed, whether it's divorce or a major illness. My daughter, as an example, she was an equestrian. She rode horses and she had competed in the Junior Olympics, and her dream was to qualify for the Olympics. And that's what she was training for. Well, she had a stroke. She lost some of her function on her left side. That's not a possibility anymore. So watching her go through a transformation, and, obviously there were down times, there were hurtful times, there were times of grieving what couldn't be anymore that she and I had to go through. But it also gave her the time to reflect, what can I do next? What's enough? What am I good at? She knew she was good at writing. She was proving that all the time. But what else? Because she was so focused on that one pathway that maybe she didn't look at the others. And that was a point in her life that she looked at what else was available to her. And it's also the point in my life where like I said earlier, I started rethinking things. When I took the first job in the Maldives, I realized that I wanted to work more internationally. In the international level, a bachelor's degree is very different from country to country, but a master's degree is kind of the leveler for the playing field. So if I wanted to work internationally, I realized I needed to get a master's degree. So at 50 something, 55, I guess, I went back and got my master's degree because I really wanted to work internationally. So once again, it was one of those, it was a horrible setback to go through what we went through, between the two of us. But it was also that point that I had to stop and think, what did I really want to do? And once I had the taste of working internationally and realized that's what I wanted to do, then I went and pursued whatever I needed to be able to get there. And so, yes, nobody gets out of life unscathed. My mom used to say that all the time. And I totally believe that. We all have our trials and tribulations. And it's a matter of, you fall down, you might hurt, you might have scrapes, but you got to get back up, brush yourself off, and figure out where you're going to go next or how you're going to get there. Because as I used to say to my daughter, you can't lie in bed the whole day in a fetal position. It's just not, you can't live that way. You won't live. So we've got to figure out a way through this. And having support systems, I think I want to add that having support systems is crucial. Your sisterhood, family, your church, wherever you get that support from, it has to be support that says, you can do this. We're here to, give you a push if you need it. But we believe in you. And we're here. We're your safety net. So I think that's another crucial part of facing adversity and getting through it and to the other side, which often is more aligned. And for me, it was much better than it had been before.
Wow. I'm impressed. Masters at 55. That's amazing. What did you pursue? What was the degree?
Well, actually, I got my degree in public policy and administration because to work internationally, that's what kind of aligned most with the work I wanted to do. But I found it, I think anything we learn, we can apply to life, to everything. I mean, administration, learning how to organize and how different organizations worked and kind of helped me get organized and figure out how I work.
And I love how you mentioned, that kind of every event in our life, you cannot be stuck in this fetal position. You gotta get up. I guess life will happen to us, but it's up to us how long we want to suffer because of what happened and how soon we want to kind of get back there. Not to say the event was easy, it was difficult and it does take time, but making that decision that we still have the power to write what comes next. We hold that the pen, we can create that. And of course, it takes time to get there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right because we can't control everything that happens in our life. We can't control most of what happens in our life, I've learned. But what we can control is how we react to it, how we act to it, what kind of support we look for, how to figure out the way through that dark tunnel. And it's not easy. It sometimes feels debilitating, but that's where the support system helps, and that's where knowing who you are helps, and that's crucial, I think, to thriving, not just surviving.
Yeah. You host Holt Talks the Lead, creating global space for women's stories. From all the conversations you've had, what is the common thread of transformation you've noticed?
Yeah, just to give a little background, Holt Talks the Lead is in production. It's a TV on a streaming network. It's an interview show of interviewing women about their leadership journeys, barriers, what did they have to work around, work through, climb over, what did they learn and what would they share for aspiring leaders or women that are wanting to elevate their leadership capabilities. And I think the thread that runs through it, and it's probably sounding a little bit like a broken record at this point, is the women who are leading at their highest potential tend to know who they are and know what they want to impact, know what they want to change or how they want to influence the world around them or their lives or their family. And that alignment seems to be one of the common threads through almost all the stories. It's figuring that out. That all of us, all of them, everyone I talked to didn't know that immediately. I mean, it took the work of, thinking it through and knowing yourself and doing that self-reflection to get to that point. So I think that's one thread. And the other thread I think that really comes through is courage comes before confidence. Every woman I talk to talks about getting up the courage to either try something, speak up, branch out, be vulnerable, because it's only that way that you create the confidence. And to me, I liken it to riding a bike. I mean, when we first get on a bike when we're younger, we're not sitting around thinking, well, I'm going to wait until I'm confident to get on that bike. We just get on the bike and have somebody help us and go. And, we might fall, we might wobble, but we ride. And it's through the riding that we get more confident about our riding. I mean, I remember me as a kid, I must have driven my mother crazy because my sisters and we would make believe that our bicycles were like horses in the circus, and we'd do all kinds of crazy stunts on our bicycles and stand up on them and do arabesques on them and do crazy things on them. But we didn't start out that way. We didn't wait until we had the confidence, we had the courage to start riding and then try different things until we got, and that's what created the confidence. So I think those two things are probably the threads that really run through it. The alignment and knowing what's important, and then also that it takes courage. It does take courage, and then you'll get your confidence and your self-trust.
I love it. I love it. Alignment is so important, and oftentimes we don't hear our voice. It gets time for us to get there, because always we hear the ego screaming when something doesn't go away. But inner voice is also there waiting to be heard. And the other thing, the courage, another analogy is like build the airplane on the way as you fly, or I call it, I don't know who said it, but let's say you coming out from point A to point B. You get on the airplane and you have to monitor the change, because it's never a direct line. You have to adjust your flight to the wind, to the speed, to any bumps in the road. And it's never, and if you were not doing that, then you would not end up in your destination. Even a like 1 degree change could land you somewhere outside of where you were.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to add one quick thing, because I know we all face it. It's that little voice in our head. Some people I know name it, and that is constantly telling us no, or constantly saying things, you don't have it, you can't do it, this isn't right. I mean, I call it the little devil on my shoulder, kind of thing that's just nag, 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 nag. But, we're all going to have it. So they're going to this voice is going to tell us you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're an imposter, you're faking it till you're making it. No, you just have to say, shut up, because I know who I am and I'm doing the best I can with the knowledge I have right now. And that's pretty darn good. But that whole, I don't think we can leave the conversation without addressing that, because we all have it. And it's going to raise its head, especially when we're feeling the most vulnerable. But you got to just trust that you got this and not listen, just kind of tune it out or tell it to shut up.
I love it. Yes. You can say, thank you for your opinion. I'm choosing what's good for me. Now that you walked through your own transformation, what mission or message feels most important for you to share with the world?
Oh, there's so many. I think that a big one is it's okay to be afraid. Sometimes fear, but rather than letting fear be debilitating, you need to use that fear to muster that energy and say, okay, once again, I know myself. I've figured myself out. I've got this. I've survived before. When bad things happen, I've figured out a way. I need to trust myself because I can do this. I can absolutely do this. And I think that's just so important, because once again, fear is just something we have. I mean, fear is going to happen, but trusting that you've made it through some really bad stuff in your life and you've come out okay, that you've got this, you can figure it out. You've got what it takes to lead in your life, in your work, in your world, wherever you want to, take the reins. You've got it because you've got a proven track record. So I think that's probably a big message that I share a lot, especially when I'm mentoring younger women, where they're either afraid to speak at a meeting or, afraid of what's the next career step, or afraid. They use that word a lot, and I'm like, but you've made it so far. That's doing real well. So just take the next step. Say yes if it feels like it's aligned with you. Yeah, there's going to be doubts, but have that courage.
I love it. That's a very powerful message. I can do this, instead of like, something's gonna go wrong.
Well, and quite honestly, there's a lot that goes wrong. But once it goes wrong, okay, well, don't go down that path. That was not quite the right choice, but I've got all these other paths to look at because I've made it this far. I'm going to keep on making it.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Is there any book you can recommend that kind of inspired your journey or something memorable that impacted your life?
Yes, and it's really it's something I read a long, long time ago, but it's kind of coming back now. And it's called The Goddess in Every Woman. And the reason it was so impactful is I guess I was very naive at one point in my life. I still am about some things, but at that point in my life, I just thought, all the women, we should gather together and be the sisterhood, and we should all think the same, and we should all be really gung-ho about women's rights, and and the things that were really important to me. And this book really talks about, and it likens it to the different archetypes of women, that women are different, just like men are different, just like dogs are different. They all have different personalities, different points of view, and that trying to lump all women together in one place, in one set of behaviors and different things like that is really ridiculous. I was really being ridiculous. So really, that book helped me understand that different perspectives. Basically it talked about women in particular, but what it really taught me was that because of different lived experiences, because of different socialization, of different family values, of personal values, that women are all different. And we might fit into certain patterns of behavior, but we're still different. And to recognize that we are all different and celebrate that and find good in no matter what somebody's personality is or behavior, you can learn something and respect it, because that's who they are. They're the experts of their lived experiences. So, learn from that. And I think that was one of the pivotal books that I read. I've read tons, but that one just really stuck with me because it taught me so many lessons just about myself, the way I was judging things, and that I shouldn't be judging people, and just to be open to all different people. I think that was really a powerful book for me. And the fact that I read it probably 30 or 40 years ago and I still remember it means that it was a very powerful book for me.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is there anything I haven't asked that you would like to share?
You have been great. That you are a great interviewer, and thank you so much for this opportunity. Just one thing that I always like to close with is that every woman has what it takes to be a leader. We do it every day in the little things that we do, that we don't need that office, we don't need that title, we don't need those employees. We just need to accept that we're leading and recognize those strengths that we do have, because we all have them. And I see so many times, I see people, and in particular women, because of the way we've been socialized a little bit and been told no so much, or kind of, lower status in some circumstances, that don't believe that. Look inside, because you have everything you need. And it's just a matter of awakening it and honing it and starting to use it. Don't be afraid.
I love that message. Don't be afraid. And I often say, you're only one decision away from reclaiming your life. You
Absolutely.
have what it takes. It's been a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge, and for the work that you're doing. Thank you.
And thank you for your podcast. I've listened to so many episodes of your podcast, and you really bring out so many important messages that we all need to learn from. So I encourage anybody listening to this particular podcast to go back and listen to all the others, because Irina really knows how to, one, get the best out of her guests, but also really hone in on those messages that are so important for us all to really take notice of and learn from. So thank you.
Thank you.